Yeah, thank you again for joining us for this Bidders Conference on the 2023 Clean and Renewable Energy Report, and really to serve as a consultant for this proceeding. Hopefully people are familiar with the previous two iterations of the reports, the 2021 and 2022 versions that have come out in the last 2 years. And so, of course, this would be a consultant to help us with the next version of this report that would come out roughly this time, or this time, if not earlier, in February next year. Next slide, please. Well, great. And I totally skipped over, I think most of the folks on the line know me, but I should have gone with, my name is Josh Ryer. I'm the managing director of our technical staff here at PURA. I'm joined by two of my colleagues. They'll help me answer questions at the end. Julia Dumaine, who heads up our strategy and operations unit, and Will Taylor, who's our clean energy guru. So you'll be working with the three of us on this project. So to provide a quick overview of the Clean and Renewable Energy program and reports. So this was part of the original Equitable Modern Grid framework, was RE09. We set up to try and create a more standardized way at looking at all of the clean and renewable energy programs in the state of Connecticut. As the idea is to obviously provide greater transparency and insight into the programs, and again, do that in a way that helps folks, policymakers, stakeholders that are interested in being able to compare key metrics on an apples to apples basis. So as we said here, it's really not only informational and data analysis, but also to inform public policy discussions that occur year round, and particularly during the legislative session. And as I already mentioned, we've released 2 of these reports already. Next slide. Great. So let's dive into specifically what we're looking for. So what you'll notice in the last couple of reports, or rather what you would have noticed was not in the last couple of reports, that we've, and the way that we actually release these reports is it's an appendix to a decision every year that reviews compliance filings that are submitted by the electric utilities that we regulate, and then provide data on all of these programs. And for this past year, we actually updated the compliance filings that they'll be providing. And one of the comments that we've received and we've acknowledged and agree with is that it would be great if these reports moving forward would include a cost-benefit analysis associated with these programs. And we're of course hesitant to provide, we do have some cost data associated with these programs, but we're hesitant to provide that without any context, right? Obviously, just providing the cost and maybe not even the full cost without the other side of the equation, the benefits, is not providing the full context for decision makers. So what we're hoping to do for this next year's report and moving forward is to develop and utilize a cost-benefit analysis tool to really look at the cost benefit of the different programs and resources that have been deployed to date, and really taking an approach that's similar to, for folks that are familiar, the Energy Storage Solutions program, where all 5 cost benefit tests are used, because certainly each test has its own perspective and utility. So we're hoping that whomever we bring on will be able to build a model for us to not only use to calculate the cost benefit for all the programs and procurements for all 5 tests for this next year's report, but also create a model that can be utilized for future years, frankly, without the consultants' help. So create a tool that can become internal for us. The other thing that in order to capture the local health and climate change benefits that we think would be helpful and will just be good to know, but also will be an input in one way or another to the cost benefit, is a standardized calculation and measurement of the emissions reductions and health benefits associated with, again, these programs and procurements. So, obviously it's interrelated with the cost benefit analysis, but we do want to also kind of create that and measure that separately so we can show, the emissions reductions that are directly attributable to these programs. As part of that, the assignment for the consultant, you'd be reviewing data that will be submitted in our annual Clean and Renewable Energy Report docket, which every year is the year number. So for this year, it's 230801. Review compliance, look at program data, not only for Connecticut, but neighboring states to the extent that it's necessary. And there's also there's compliance filings and other proceedings before the authority that you'll want to look at as well. The other thing, the very last thing in terms of the primary focus and the quantification of additional costs and benefits that we don't currently incorporate into the annual report is economic development impact analysis. Now, this one's last because I will note that I think it's biannually, but at least the last one that was done was at the end of 2021, is the Green Bank, and I believe it's the joint council between the Green Bank and the Energy Efficiency Board, do a report on the jobs that are created from the clean energy industry in Connecticut. So certainly we're not looking to replicate that good work, but rather to incorporate those measurements and other similar measurements into the cost benefit analysis that is the primary focus of the consultant responsibilities that we're looking for. The secondary focus that we'd ask or we have for the scope of work for this consultant is just to help us draft the reports. You'll see that we have kind of a standard template that we used for the last two years. Some great work that Will has done. It certainly takes a lot for just one person to be able to pull that together and make it look good. So we're hoping to get some support to not only standardize that report format, but also any suggested improvements to the visual aids or descriptions or other ways we can present data would certainly be welcome. But we just want to be clear that in addition to providing this model and additional ways to calculate costs and benefits associated with these programs and procurements, we'd also be asking you to help us draft and improve the reports. And then there's kind of a third bucket of different things that we would we may or would likely, depending on what tasks are more or less likely that we would ask you to do. Things ranging from just issuing interrogatories for more data, helping us draft direction for the utilities and things that we want to make sure are clearly communicated in terms of data requests or actions that we'd like them to take for future years. And then also to help us, to the extent possible and where it comes in, look at the development of a tool that could help us evaluate the cost and benefit of legislative proposals. So for example, we could ask, in fact, often there's a requirement for the clean energy legislation to have a fiscal note that accompanies it. We often then get asked to do a ratepayer impact analysis. And so it'd be great to be able to standardize that analysis, both for our own sake to make it a more efficient process, but also to provide greater transparency into what the legislators are being provided, and certainly in the mode of full transparency, what we are able to calculate currently is more of just the ratepayer impact. So it would be great to be able to bake in or to actually provide calculations. Yes, this is the potential ratepayer impact or costs associated with these programs, but here are also the benefits for you to be able to weigh those costs and benefits as a comprehensive whole. Next slide, please. So great. So that's an overview of the kind of 3 buckets of tasks that we had asked this consultant to work on for us in order of their importance. The qualifications that we are hoping for to be able to best support and deliver on those 3 buckets are listed here. So obviously, hopefully you heard that we're looking for someone that has a strong background and skills in data analytics, also knowledgeable in energy policy, not just conducting these cost-benefit analyses and building models around the 5 tests that I mentioned, but also understand the implications of this analysis and how it's used to explain and rationalize public policy. And kind of the other side of that coin, flipping from energy policy knowledge to regulatory experience, a familiarity with our process, the PURA utility regulation process will help you in helping us to navigate issuing utilities, requests for information, and getting to where we all want to go in terms of a better report in the future. And then in the last piece in the bottom right here on communications, I think it's probably could also be articulated as just having experience providing and written reports that are publicly consumable on the topics that I've discussed, right? So any applicable experience that you've had creating similar reports is what we're looking for. Next slide, please. Great. So you can see here that this is our tentative docket schedule. So I mentioned earlier a little bit inaccurately that the next year's report would be coming out a little bit earlier than around now earlier. Time flies. So I was thinking we were closer to January. So we are hoping to get next year's report out by the end of next January. As you can see, we get most of our compliance and the data that we use for the report in mid-November. So we're hoping to do a lot of the work. We're hoping to execute an agreement with whomever we choose to be the consultants in early June. That way we have time between June in November to really start laying the foundation for additional data we might need, and also for the consultant to start building the model that we're asking to be created. And then once we have the data in November, between November and January, we'd be working on inputting the data into the model and then creating that final work product, which is the annual report. The one thing I maybe missed in that summary between early June and mid-November is also we'd want to use that time to start proactively thinking about changes to the report in terms of the formatting or visuals that we might add. Certainly it's easier to do it early in the process than it is between mid-November and the end of January, when we're just quickly rushing to try and get all the right data into the report and get it issued. Next slide. Great. So this is just a highlight that the proposal requirements, table 1 of section 3 of the RFP gives a summary of what's required for the proposal. We also ask that you provide a detailed cost estimate breakdown as required in section 3E. The one other thing that I want to mention that's not on this slide is that we will have clear guidance in terms of the cost for the proposal. And what I mean by that is that our standard RFP will have language that makes clear that the proposed cost that we're signing for the contract is binding, and that what we're expecting to be delivered will be delivered on that cost estimate. So the reason I mentioned that here is just it underscores the importance for accurate and comprehensive cost estimates at the time that we execute the contract. Next slide. Great. All right. So in terms of next steps for the RFP itself, so we'd ask that folks by Friday. I know that for some of you that might be a holiday, but certainly email will still work. We'd ask that you provide a notice of intent to bid. That just gives us a sense of who's bidding and whether or not we missed the mark or hit the mark in terms of our RFP and our promotion of it. Then we'll next Friday, April 14th, is the deadline for any questions on the RFP, but certainly we'll answer some at the end of this. And then we'll issue a week later clarification on that RFP. And then a week after that, so April 28th, proposals will be due to us. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're hoping to select a consultant by the beginning of June. Next slide. Great. Well, before I open it up to any questions, I just want to give my colleagues, Julia and Will, an opportunity to add anything that I may have missed.
I don't think I have anything to add. I think you pretty much covered it all. Yeah, and I mean, I guess the only thing I would add is while the last 2 years are something to look at as sort of what we have, we're hoping to make some large strides and improvements in the next year's iteration with the help of a consultant.
Yeah, agreed. Well, great. Well, thanks for that, Will. With that, we're happy to open it up to questions.
If folks would like to please use the raise hand function. I think it's in the reactions button of the Zoom bar. I'll call on you. All right. Thank you. Jim Kennerly, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes. You can. Hey, Jim.
Great. Hey, Josh. I just wanted to, I think where I'd start is just, what is the relative, you showed a slide that showed a series of different qualifications and sort of emphasis, what's the relative emphasis, like in terms, do you have sort of percentage emphasis on various qualifications for the consultant? I guess sometimes there's sort of bid evaluation levels of emphasis, and I was just curious if you kind of had any of those here.
Yeah, that's a good question. Julia, can you remind me the categories that we score based off of? Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry, yes. So we typically score on credentials for this engagement, experience, your approach, your grasp of the scope, and cost effectiveness. So those are pretty vague categories because we use them across a variety of different RFPs, generally speaking. But I think I would say that for the 4 on the screen here, as they relate to the primary tasks and focus that we've included, that would probably be where we focus the most in terms of your credentials and experience for the scope of this project.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the more you can show with your credentials that you have experience that align with these areas, particularly primary and secondary, the more highly we'd score you.
So more to be explicit, you're saying data analysis and model development is the main category of experience for that evaluation. And
exactly. And then secondary would be drafting reports.
Okay. Understood. Thank you. And I guess I don't want to monopolize, but we have several questions. Should we just go sort of let folks alternate, or how would you like to do that?
At this time, nobody else has a hand raised, so.
I think somebody did just put something in the chat, so I want to give them a chance.
Thank you.
Well, an easy one for Gray. No, the answer is no. We did not use a consultant. Will was our consultant, so he did a great job for us throwing him into the deep end and swimming. So okay. Yeah, and then happy to go to the rest of your questions, Jim. I will say some of them ask whatever ones you think are going to be most appropriate for us to give you a live answer. There is, of course, that opportunity to submit the written questions. So,
Sure.
If any are more appropriate for that, feel free to hold them for that opportunity.
Yeah, I will use my editorial discretion. So that is fair. So I think I'll just try and stick to the high points then, which is just mostly, does the agency have a relative budget in mind? This is just a lot of tasks, and that's certainly great. And I think we're certainly considering a proposal here. I just was curious, is there a relative sort of limit you all are looking for?
Yeah, so we have the statutory cap of 200,000, right, per proceeding. I think that's frankly always also why we're always interested in seeing lots of bids. It's difficult to it's a little bit hard for us to guesstimate what the cost is going to be without really seeing what other folks think it's going to cost them to do it, and not having precisely all of the expertise that you all have. But yeah, so I think with any RFP, we're trying to certainly keep it under the 200,000 and trying to keep it as cost effective as possible. But I think part of it is just seeing what folks bid in, seeing, and then understanding what we're getting for really, and to Julia's earlier point about one of I think it's the fourth category is cost effectiveness. It's really a question of what are ratepayers getting for their money, right? So we'll critically analyze it based on whether or not we think we're getting good value for the price point. But I know that doesn't help you with a specific question of, what do we think is reasonable? And I think the short answer to that question is hopefully under 200,000, and then we'll just have to analyze what projects, proposal by proposal what we get.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good to know the 200,000. I appreciate the reminder. I think we only have one more. I think the others are fairly detailed, so maybe we'll just spare people the headache of that and ask a separate question. I think the sort of higher level one that I suspect others may have is, I saw the RFP schedule and I think it was very detailed. I think one thing that was missing was understanding approximately when in that schedule PURA was hoping to have the final BCA model, draft or final of the BCA model completed. So for project planning purposes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would think early November so that we're all on the same page before we actually get the updated data, and then we can just plug that in. But I want to see, Will, do you have any, because I don't think we've officially made a call on that.
Yeah, I mean, early November is probably ideal. I mean, so to say, like as early as we can get it is ideal in the sense that if we require, more data inputs for the model that the consultant finds, having the opportunity to ask those interrogatories to the EDCs and provide them time to get the data back to us so we can input it to the model if we don't already have that data coming in November is helpful. With that said, I mean, the model needs to be done to get the report out. So
yeah. So what I think, Jim, the answer is probably an early draft in somewhere in the September timeframe, and with a final deliverable in late October, early November on the model.
Great. Thanks very much, guys.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, Devin, Gabby.
Hey, everyone. I just had a follow-up question on the budget piece. Is there a specific format in terms of how the budget should be laid out, whether it's time and materials, not to exceed, fixed price, any restrictions in that?
You're muted.
Yeah. There's not restrictions on like what parks cannot exceed, like the whole thing can't exceed 200,000.
Right.
But there are sub restrictions in that. And then I will say the RFP does have a format that we asked folks to put their cost estimates in. We would ask that you follow that, but we've had other proposals follow that and then give us another, other ways of breaking it down to the extent that it seems like it's easier to explain it another way. So that's also welcome.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Jim Kennerly.
All right, sorry to be that guy. I just thought of something again. I guess my question is also I guess the way we were reading this RFP too, it looks like it was an attempt to create a template and a process for repeatability for creating the report in the future. Is there sort of a thought that possibly there'd be an annual consulting support like associated with this in the future? Not necessarily for the consultants selected here, but is it sort of like PURA is trying strategically to have more tools to bring it to do it better in-house, or is there kind of a hope to have there be relatively regular future consulting support with regard to this?
Yeah, I think our aim is that this would create something that would be totally internal to us, and therefore would not require future consultants to help us with it. Yeah, that's the objective.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I do not see any more questions in the chat or any hands raised. So last call. Otherwise, as Josh previously stated, we will be accepting clarifications through April 21st. April 14th, and we will be responding to those by April 21st. Of course, things that are questions that are more proprietary in nature or more detailed will respond directly to you, but if they are more general in nature, we will send them to all bidders that issued a notice of intent to bid, and we will also post them to the RFP webpage that we have on our PURA website. So hopefully that helps. We'll also follow up with any clarifying questions to you following the receipt of your proposals, and let you know if we need any additional information to review your proposal. And then, like Josh said, hopefully contract execution by early June. So with that, Josh, any closing remarks?
No, thank you. We appreciate everybody's attendance and interest in this today. It's been great to have this resource out the last couple of years, and so we're really looking forward to providing an annual resource to policymakers in the states that will have a real impact and help, I want to say, raise the level of discord around these programs, but certainly make sure that everybody that's involved in the process has a equal footing in terms of the information and analysis that they have at their fingertips when these decisions are being made. So this is really important work for us, and we're excited that so many of you seem to agree and are interested in helping us out. So thanks again.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all for joining, and we hope you all have a great day, and we look forward to seeing your proposals.
Thank you.
Thank you.